let's move on to Miami and save Joel from further
Regressive.
embarrassment. Miami's been quite different, I think it's fair to say, to Indian Wells, with all four semi-finalists from Indian Wells already going out. Jack Draper, Holger Rune, Carlos Alcaraz, and Daniil Medvedev. Let's start with Jack Draper, first of all. He just won Indian Wells. He's up into the top 10. You know, everything was going swimmingly, but he did lose to Jakub Mensik in straight sets in the second round here in Miami. 7-6, 7-6. It was two tie breaks. Jakub Mensik has had some big scalps so far in his young career. So, on reflection, perhaps not the biggest upset in the world. But Joel, coming to you, what did you make of Draper out in Miami, sort of after that fine fortnight he had in California?
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how hard it is with these kind of back-to-back big events, how much of a challenge it is, I think, to kind of keep up that energy, keep up that level of tennis across like these both tournaments. We saw that with Draper. We're going to talk about it later. We saw that with Mira Andreeva as well. But to be fair to Mensik, I mean, he is a player who's got a big ceiling. I think we saw particularly on his serve how good some aspects of his game are. I mean, he sent down 21 aces in his match against Draper, and arguably he doesn't really get the noise, I think, or the plaudits as a teenager. I mean, he's 19 years old, as some of the others kind of cohorts around him are getting. There's a lot more noise, I feel, around Fonseca, Draper, and he's going under the radar a little bit. But when it comes to kind of match play, shot making, and his record against kind of top 10 players, it does speak for himself. And it does make me think that although, he's a player, I think around kind of 50 in the world at the moment, I think he's going to be making big leaps forward. And it's sort of just kind of waiting, I think, for maybe having a tournament like Jack Draper did in Indian Wells.
He's your
Oh,
pick, isn't he, Kim? Remember? Pick of the year?
yes, for the start of the year. Yeah. I mean, he's only 19, big future ahead of him. He has a winning record over top 10 players, including now, obviously, Jack, who is now in the top
Mm.
10. But I mean, Chris, do you think it was just a case of it catching up with Jack Draper, all of, last week, tiredness, scheduling, just too much to expect of him second time around?
We probably have to take some responsibility because we did get on the hype train. I do think we are aware that it's so hard to back up a big win. The Sunshine Double has been done quite a number of times by
Yeah.
a certain type of player, though. I think it
Mm.
is someone who is much more seasoned. It tends to be not normally your breakout to win both. But having said that, I mean, if someone is slamming down 21 aces or above 20 aces, it's going to be so hard, only able to kind of craft two break points. And it is a case when you get into some of these tie breaks, you're probably going to be, well, not the favorite when you play against such a big server. So I don't think we can read too much into it. I think it wasn't like he completely, self-destructed at all. That was not the case. It was very competitive. There were some great rallies. But obviously, when something like that happens to you in Indian Wells, like a career-defining moment, producing your next best level or staying at that level is really challenging. So I don't think we have to be worried. But at the same time, I do think he probably would have expected a little bit more from himself and would have wanted a bit more having won the title last week.
Yeah, no reason to panic at the moment. I mean, another young player, Joao Fonseca, also won through against Ugo and Bear straight sets, but their match actually caused a bit of disruption for a Draper and Mensik's match. They had a bit of a stoppage in the second set because the Fonseca and Bear match was moved from the court that they were playing on to the main court, meaning all the Brazilian fans that had got themselves a nice seat were not happy and had to kind of stampede over to the other court, which, was very disruptive. And they had to kind of call time on the Draper match until all the fans left. The fans actually had to upgrade their tickets and pay an extra $10 each, which, I mean, I wouldn't have been happy with that as a Brazilian
No.
fan, but you do have to expect some schedule changes, don't you? But I mean, what did you make of that? Do you think that was the right move to make?
No.
By the organizers?
It
No.
was just total. I mean, it was just total chaos, and I would have been. I completely understand the situation that the Brazilian fans were in because they were, waiting to see their man. I think some of them had been waiting in the stands for like 4 or 5 hours. I think we've all been there, and then to be told kind of last minute, on the tannoy, oh, by the way, the player you're seeing is being moved to a court your ticket doesn't have access to. And on top of that, you're going to have to pay extra to get in. I can understand their frustrations completely.
It didn't seem right, did it? It almost feels like it doesn't make sense, especially because they've been so vocal on that court the entire day. It was already making reports they were chanting for their player as early as like the first match of the day. And there were hours left before they would be seeing him play. So you feel like it doesn't make sense from a fan perspective. You do want matches to finish, hopefully within a respectable time. But I think this is more because, other matches had finished early. So it made sense to swap it to give the stadium court a bit more for their money. But at the same time, I do think that causing the disruption, it was always going to do that. It was always going to cause carnage. And you do just think that some decisions should be fan first, and this definitely wasn't.
Well, maybe they'll learn from that. I don't know. Let's have a look at Carlos Alcaraz because, well, this was a bit more of a shock defeat, I think. On Friday, Carlos Alcaraz losing in 3 sets to David Goffin.
Legend.
Player, who we know well. Goffin's been around a while, but he's not, currently in, the top 30. He's not someone we would have expected to have upset Alcaraz. And yeah, Alcaraz not at the races. We'd all predicted him to win Miami, and this is the kind of type of tournament without a Sinner present that you'd expect Alcaraz at this time of the year just to kind of rack up. And he's really not having a great season, very inconsistent. 4 losses now in 19 matches. What was it that enabled Goffin to get the win over Alcaraz? Joe, I know you're quite a fan of Goffin, so I'm going to come to you on this first.
I mean, this is incredible because David Goffin now has a winning head-to-head record on the tour against Carlos Alcaraz, 2-1. And this is a player who, I was watching in Wimbledon qualifying rounds, last season. So for him to kind of go up against Carlos Alcaraz, come through in 3 sets, I think one of the things that was impressive was his first serve. I mean, he was serving at 65% first serves in. I think that would have given a lot of confidence on his, in his service games. And you can see he was kind of ready to attack the Carlos Alcaraz game. And as much as I think that helped, it was also kind of, I think, combined by the fact that Alcaraz, he was just making errors that you just do not expect Carlos Alcaraz to make. And it did make me wonder, like, in these moments where he's just expected to win comfortably, I do wonder if he puts too much pressure on himself and it's having an adverse effect on his game, because this is not a match he should be losing, but just the manner of it and the errors that he was making, it just felt like it was a level that we just associate with him. And it felt like more of a mental thing that was impacting his game to me.
I mean, 43 unforced errors, 28 on the forehand wing. Is there a bit of a problem? Because I was thinking about this, and we've been in this situation before with Alcaraz where he's lost his form and then he's come back and won a slam. Obviously, last year he didn't have much form going into Roland Garros and Wimbledon, then he really turned it up. But is he just a big match player, do we think? Do we think he's kind of becoming a player a bit like that, who only really can turn it on and get that magic going in some of on the biggest stages in the sport? Because this felt quite lackluster from a performance perspective.
It did make me think about, the fact that when his game is on, he is, at times unbeatable. He is a Grand Slam champion. He can achieve records that not many players can. But his worst level is still a level that leaves him vulnerable to quite low-ranked players. And I think something that he needs to work on with his team is this idea that when he's not playing his best tennis, he's still coming through with victories and maintaining that consistency. Because I still think his kind of worst level is leaving him vulnerable, to these sorts of defeats. And he needs to be able to win not playing his best tennis.
Winning ugly. I mean, before the clay court season commences in Europe, what do you think Alcaraz needs to work on and focus on before we go over to the clay?
Definitely, I think the consistency side of things. That is, I mean, sometimes you watch him play and it's a fantastic set of tennis. We even saw that. I mean, against Dimitrov, he won 2 sets with a loss of 2 games. He made short work of Shapovalov, who's had a lot of form, and then took a bagel set. against Draper, having lost one 6-1. So it does feel like there's a focus issue. And I think that always has been a little bit of a problem for him. Again, this is all like within the context of him being one of the most successful Grand Slam champions ever for his age. But I do think there is a focus issue that sometimes creeps in. He has always had a bit of a habit of losing sets in matches which he doesn't necessarily need to. And a lot of that has come from the fact that his serve hasn't always been the biggest weapon in the game. I think that's probably something that doesn't mean he gets the most free points. I mean, he only won 65% of points behind the first serve. So maybe he needs to continue working on that service action, which we know that he is working on. And hopefully that will bring a bit more success, because it does feel like when he's on the back foot, it's not necessarily a case that he's winning easily.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't alone. Daniil Medvedev went out to Jaume Munar, Mallorcan.
Oh, one of your favourites.
And Holger Rune, Indian Wells finalist, went out to Riley Opelka. I mean, in a final set tiebreak, in fairness. But perhaps they all need to be playing some Ludo or doing those board games, because one player who is into round 4 nicely is Novak Djokovic, who's been, getting a couple of wins under his belt, which is actually a change for him in recent times. Although, he hasn't had to play, let's say, the highest caliber opponents. I think he played, Rinky Hijikata, a lucky loser just now. But I think,
lucky losers, and Novak Djokovic, he's actually broken the lucky loser curse.
Wow. Could you explain the lucky loser curse, Joel, to our listeners who may not know more?
He's lost what? Last couple of, he's
Indian
lost
Wells, yeah.
He
lost 2 lucky losers.
Yes, in consecutive years, yeah. He's really not...
So what a relief he's come through now.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a record that you want to have, the lucky loser record, that's for sure. But it seems like things are switching into gear a little bit. He hasn't necessarily faced too tough an opponent. I think if we're celebrating the fact he beat a lucky loser, it's probably not a testament to the fact that we think he's playing his best game. But
Can you see him winning the tournament though? Like, is his level good enough? Or sometimes you just need a couple of wins to get into it. But can you see, now that Alcaraz has gone out, Draper's out, is there hope that he could win the title?
I think the way the draw is unfolding in his half, he's definitely got a big opportunity. And I think actually the fact that he went out so early on in Indian Wells, he basically had 2 weeks with his team, with Andy Murray, to work on his game. And again, I think time is so important, when it is like kind of back to back. And we've seen the absence of time have a big impact on players who did really well in Indian Wells. Kim, as you said, all 4 semi-finalists now out. And actually, when you do have that time to be with your team, it can have massive dividends. And I think we're seeing this with Djokovic. And I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a deep run here, because Alcaraz is out. It feels like the bottom half for him it's open for him to make a deep run.
Are there any lucky losers left in the draw? We should check before we say that. Yeah.
Well, he's broken the curse now, so it's immaterial. He even ended up playing tennis with Robert Kennedy Jr., who is currently in the US government. So I think he's the health secretary.
I thought this was quite interesting. He tweeted, Novak Djokovic, first in tennis, first in integrity, first in courage. Guess who won this match? ?
Interesting.
I wonder who did win.
I mean, hard to know, but I'm sure they talked vaccinations when they met up.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being an anti-vaccine advocate, shall we say, which obviously
maybe that's what they bonded over.
I'm just looking at the post, and I'm looking at the tennis shoes both of them are wearing. I feel like Djokovic definitely has the advantage. It looks like
hiking shoes.
Yeah,
almost.
Kennedy Jr. is just wearing some loafers.
Yeah, well, maybe they just had a casual hit, but it's all about the photo op. But yeah, Djokovic doing well. We'll see how long that continues. Well, it's nice that maybe the board games are making a bit of an impact, and Andy Murray is having some positive coaching success as well.